All right, fantastic. Apologize for being a couple of minutes late. That was my fault today, but pleased to be here on the Decision Room today with Sean Farrell. He is CEO of Quality Data Systems, QDS, a company that's grown from $2 million to over $40 million under his leadership. Today, we will be discussing culture, character, and compounding growth. Sean, welcome.
Josh, thanks for having me, man. Excited for this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So glad to connect. Maybe you could just, give us a quick thumbnail sketch of your background and maybe if you want to give a quick intro into QDS as well.
Sure. We're based here in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is essentially where I grew up. I was a baseball player, had the privilege to play baseball for the University of North Carolina, got drafted by Oakland, ended up having a career-ending kind of shoulder injury, came back into the family business to kind of rehab in the off season, ended up falling in love with sales, and shoulder really never got better. So joined my dad in the business that he had started in 83 and 2003. And we have since grown from about 2 states when I joined in 2003 to now 14, 15 states, grown from about 15 people to 116, 118 during that time. Got to spend, roughly 19 years working together. And my dad exited the business in 2022. Our company focuses on financial technology, so things like ATM machines and other types of branch technology for banks and credit unions primarily, as well as the retail marketplace.
Got it. So can you, maybe speak specifically to what some of those solutions are and maybe the evolution of those solutions over time?
Sure. We are primarily a cash automation company. So things like ATM machines, now the rise of ITMs, which means interactive teller machines. So really allowing self-service to do as many of the transactions that might typically be done at the teller line. We do things as basic as cash discriminators that are the little dollar bill counters that would be on the back teller counter or in a casino you may see in a movie. And another primary product would be a product called cash recyclers, which is basically a vault married to that machine. So it handles every cash in and out transaction that a teller and or universal banker in the institution would do that. Over half of our company is service. So we've got field service technicians that go out and work on the equipment, do preventative maintenance, break fix, and certainly anything we can do to drive recurring revenue is really what we're looking for these days.
Got it. And is that, I guess I'm one of the people who does still use an ATM now and again. And so how has that technology evolved? I mean, you alluded to some things, but where do you see it kind of going forward?
Yeah, I would say if you look at our market, there's kind of there are people who don't want to invest in that channel. It's not a key part of their strategy. So they typically want to be the most efficient dispenser of $20 bills, keep their costs down. Other people are taking more of a holistic approach and saying, how do we move transactions that are basic and mundane from a person having to accomplish them to allowing a customer greater access over greater hours, different withdrawal limits, the ability to move money between all of their accounts. So typically things in the past that would require a human to do, now the machine is able to do that long past the hours in which the branch is open. So we kind of talk a little bit about the Amazon effect of consumer demands, and they want convenience at every turn. And that's just one way that they're able to offer more types of transactions in self-service, much like we see in grocery, the airport, kind of, financial institutions aren't typically known as the leaders on the technology curve. So they're playing catch up with a lot of other verticals out there.
So you made a couple points there, like, different limits and things like that. So how much of your solution is kind of the hardware side and, making sure that everything's counted correctly and sort of however it has to be bundled or managed or sorted, that's handled versus kind of the software side and intelligence.
Yeah, software is roughly kind of 10 to 20% of the overall cost over, let's say, an 8 to 10 year life cycle on an ATM. So depending, there's devices as inexpensive as kind of 15 to $20,000 up to more like the 50 to $80,000 for the Cadillac that can do everything.
Yep.
Uh, we're seeing a lot more managed services. So, keeping the operating system up to date, compliance, the ability to remotely repair things without having to send a physical technician on site. So that's part of our managed service and service offering. And I can't remember the last ATM we sold that didn't have that as part of that program. Trying to keep fraud down, all of these vectors that are not unique to our business, but when you're handing out pieces of paper with presidents' faces on it, it tends
Yeah.
to really matter that it stays secure.
Sure. So the growth of the business, is that driven through sort of the, expanding the sort of functionality or that side, the hardware side of the technology? Is it kind of coming up with the managed service programs? What really, or is it just you kind of figured out how to do it really well in one geography and then understood how to scale that to kind of other geographies?
Yeah, I think one, you've got we have hardware that has some bells and whistles advantages. So like any other product out there, we think we've got some advantages. But I think it goes back to more of like, we have a unique culture. We operate as a faith-based business. We are very big on being a partner, not a vendor. And we feel like that term gets overused in business a lot. But we get in the bunker with our clients. We are an advocate for them because we may have to work with their core software provider. There may be an ATM network. There may be any number of other players that have their hands in the pot. And we just find that a lot of the competition is like, well, let us know when they fix their stuff and we'll come back, versus we tend to jump in, lock arms with the client and kind of help them get through any of the challenges that may occur. And then, I would say customer service, if you look at that across a wide range of industries, just doing what you say you're going to do often exceeds people's expectations. And so we've had a lot of word of mouth growth based on our expertise, infrastructure, and kind of how we do business. That certainly in financial institutions, they talk to one another and, hey, who do you got that does ATMs well? Or who's your cash recycler vendor? And because we have executed at a high level for certainly the last probably 5 to 10 years, it has really helped us grow. And when you don't have clients walking away because you treat them well, I think we've lost less than 10 clients since I've been here in 20 or 21 years. It becomes a lot easier to grow a business when you don't have 10 or 15% you got to replace every year.
So how has your sort of personal leadership approach or philosophy evolved over that time period?
I think leadership is a constant learning cycle. I think I'm an Enneagram 9, which is kind of the bleeding heart, which also matches. I've got some of the other traits that are more strategic and competitive. I'm one of the most competitive people you'll know. So that was coming from sales and athletics, finding that competitive drive. I have an allergy to complacency, so I always think we can improve, and I think the team kind of adopts that mantra. But I'm also a natural collaborator, so I think people want to be seen, heard, and valued culturally. So I think that tends to gravitate towards my sweet spot. As we've had, as we've had growth and new leadership come in alongside me, you know, having those tougher conversations, being a little bit more of a driver and executor traditionally was not a strength of mine. I don't love crucial conversations. I'm much better at being a cheerleader and really kind of mentoring people. But I've had to grow in setting proper expectations, holding people accountable. And if we're going to continue to hold the bar high as an organization, you kind of got to have a little bit of that stick every now and again. And that's probably been an area of growth for me as being a little tougher and a little more holding people accountable than maybe is my comfort zone naturally.
Is there a particular moment in your time with the company where you had to make, a difficult leadership call that impacted the organization and shaped the direction?
Oh man, there's been a number of them. I would say I did not get my I did not get my MBA, but I consider '08 and '09 kind of my on the job MBA. We were relatively small at that period of time, coming off a record year. We basically had to refinance our building at the time to kind of keep us going. Dad and I had to let go my aunt and uncle over like a 6 month period. So, being a young late 20s person, having to let go of your aunt and uncle, I had a salesperson that wasn't performing who was in their mid 50s that, like, you're not used to having someone cry in your office. And what am I going to do about my family? So, I think we really did everything we could to survive. And, I think any good owner, we try to pull funds from 401k or anywhere we can to make sure we make payroll and keep our people employed. So to me, that was kind of one of our moments of truth, was that '08, '09 downturn and kind of getting through that. Obviously, working through the transition with my father, we worked very well together for a long period of time. He did a great job as a first generation, especially probably the last 3 to 5 years of ultimately kind of letting me have the final decision, because this is going to be yours. And so I think navigating through the changing of the guard, going through that process while also growing at anywhere from 20 to 40% in any given year certainly was a pivotal moment. And I think one of the lessons I learned the most is 2019. We had a good opportunity to grow in the market, and we tried to grow in 4 directions at once. And we about ran out of cash, and it was a good lesson in how you can get out over your skis, even if you're well positioned. And so since then, we've gotten debt free. We haven't touched our line of credit in 2 years. So we've really been profitable and financially sound as we've grown and really driven that, which again, to me, goes back to being a good steward and some of our biblical principles. But, you definitely are the slave when you're the debtor. And that was a very challenging time in 2019, having your line of credit tapped and having to work your way through that. So a couple lessons learned along the way.
And has all your growth been organic, or have you grown through acquisition too?
We did one small acquisition of my father's former partner, less than 200 grand. So technically, I guess you could call that an acquisition, but it has been, we'll call it 98, 99% organic. We were a $2 million business when I started in '03. And most of that growth has really been since 2015. We were still a $5 million business. So 10 years, we will have gone from 5 to 50 is our target for this year.
So I don't know if you've read Good to Great, but a lot of times
Yes.
they talk about,
Personal
business.
favorite.
So was there something in particular that kind of drove the hockey stick for you in 2015?
My dad was always the product guy, always looking for what was next. I was more of the focus. And as we scaled, it was, it's a lot harder to train 40 people how to work on new equipment versus 8 or 10. So to me, it was, yes, there's a lot of stuff we can do. And I think it goes back to, I think it's the hedgehog principle of what can we be the best at? And we were really good at these 3 things. So it's like, let's focus on these 3 things. And we landed a couple of very large ITM customers that or ATM customers that launched us into the next strata of accounts. So we had less than 100 ATMs in back-to-back years. We did north of 200 plus unit fleets that we replaced and brought on. So we went from less than 100 to probably 300 to 400. And then from there, we've probably doubled just about every year, it feels like, as we've kind of gotten the flywheel going. So to me, I think it was focus and really executing at a high level instead of trying to be all things to everyone.
So you mentioned some of kind of the, faith-based principles and how the culture of the company is driven that way? Are some of those things that go back to your dad that you built on, or things that you've brought in, or can you talk a
I,
little bit more around that?
yeah, I would say dad always operated by treating people well. And we talk about the family culture, which you're not really allowed to talk about on LinkedIn because every HR person or everyone out there says family is an awful term to use for a company. But we use that as looking out for one another, taking care of one another. So I think those principles were deep and instilled. I became a part of a group called C12, which is a Christian based CEO peer group, kind of like Vistage or some of the others that are out there. And I think that drove a lot of the eye opening of what business as a ministry can look like. And we created a care team or a ministry team. We started, taking care of our employees first through that. And then it continued to snowball. And in 2021, we stood up our own 501c3 called Lionheart Charities. That gave us a lot more freedom in how we could impact the communities we serve. And now that has kind of become our driving force on we want to be a great business so that we can have a bigger impact to the communities we serve. So, Dad was always there as the foundation, took great care of people. I tend to tie it a little bit more towards the faith and kind of working it through that. And now that's really how we operate. And one of the things I was most excited about, 2022 was the first year, 2023 was the first year we tried to win a top workplace award, and we were successful. But most importantly, we won the values award, which meant our employees out of all of the company survey rated us the highest of living out our values. So as an owner and driver, that was a very emotional moment and certainly a big win for us on the culture side.
So is that you approach change the way you think about hiring and bringing people into the organization, and how you assess whether people will be a fit?
Not a whole lot. So you do not have to be a believer to work here. We talk about that a lot. We use it as through our faith, we are called to love people and love them well. And so I would say the culture almost fights harder for itself more in like, our people operate with excellence. They are big believers in integrity and doing the right thing. So if people get through our hiring process and don't really walk the values, regardless of the faith side, it's just, if you're not someone we can count on, if you don't operate how we operate, then they kind of get forced out fairly quickly by the culture of like, this is not who we are and how we operate. So we have also found success with partners. Now, obviously, we are primarily based here in the South, which you could call the Bible Belt. We do go as far north as Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And I think at the end of the day, clients want honesty, they want transparency, they want truth, and they want people to do what's right. And I think the more that they experience that, and if there's an issue that comes up and you do the right thing, that's a lot of how we communicate that to everyone. We're not looking for every bank or credit union to be a believer, but it's important that the why behind our values. Our values are important. They're not just stuck on a wall. And we've had numbers of cases where maybe we sold the wrong solution, we took it back. I mean, there's any number of things that we talk about doing the right thing, not the most profitable thing. So it's more of a North Star or guiding light than it is but it has tended to draw clients to us because they appreciate those values, certainly here in the South.
And in terms of, given what I do, and having a recruiting business, I'm just curious. Talk a lot about people get hired on skills and experience, but they get fired on behaviors, right? That doesn't necessarily mean they're doing something to get them fired for cause. It's just they may not be the right cultural fit. They may not have the right behavioral profile to be successful in what's needed in the role day to day, even if they appear to have the skills that would be a fit. So I'm just curious, is there a way that you try to assess people sort of for the do the right thing and how on the front end they'll fit into the culture, or is it more, you alluded to if someone comes in and they're not the right fit, they're probably not going to stick around too long. Like, how do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a fairly good interview process, and you'll have to forgive me because I'm not in it for the most part these days.
Yeah.
Uh, we primarily hire in service and office positions, which typically do not flow through me. So I think we've built a pretty good process. Even for a service technician, we may have the most elaborate process that these people are used to going through. And so when you're being interviewed for technical competency, and then we're going to ship you a machine, and then we're going to watch you, and then we're going to ask good questions about more about how they approach stuff than what a resume would say, we tend to get a pretty good feeling for folks. I always think we could interview better around just how they operate. I've looked at, I think it's Chris Carter's stuff on kind of the key things to look for cultural alignment and things like that. So we haven't implemented a lot of that stuff yet, but we have not had too many people come into the organization that just don't fit, and I think they love that we care for them. We talk a lot about the whole human and caring for the whole person, not just the employee, and so we haven't really had a lot of people that don't appreciate that or want to be part of that regardless of their belief system.
And I'm curious, sort of looping back to the competitive side and your baseball experience. Is that another sort of aspect where you're looking for people who are competitive and not necessarily competitive like elbowing their peers out, but competitive in a team sense and wanting the team to be successful or strive for growth and goal achievement? Or is that something sort of across the whole culture, or maybe
I think
sales
it's
side, or how do you
I
yeah.
think it is somewhat role specific. For example, I would much rather have a project manager who is detail oriented and a good communicator than someone who is competitive. But we have a lot of our technicians who don't like to get beat by the machine, or they will come up with a solution as opposed to just, that part didn't fix it. I guess I'll leave it down and I'll be back tomorrow. Like, we want people that are driven to solve the problem. And while, what else could I do to try to fix this thing? And obviously sales is an easy one of we pride ourselves in selling with integrity, and we want people to spend the right money, not the most money, but we don't like to lose either. So, you want some of those people that have the drive. They've got a great story to tell about our company, and they want to get it out there and get that in the hands of people. And thankfully, we've been blessed to not lose very often. So I think it is more role specific than in general, but we are looking for people who want to win, and they want to be on a winning team. And I think that's, as we continue to refine the culture, we talk a lot about that kind of winning a championship mindset and next person up. I mean, a lot of the stuff that you can pull sports analogies from that, hey, so-and-so's on PTO. So how are we going to step in and finish this project off? Or how are we thinking about making ourselves better every day, more efficient, more cost effective, taking better care of clients? And so I hope that people have a drive for that. We try to root out mediocrity wherever we can.
So is there a particular team you're a fan of?
No, it's weird after playing for so long. I'm certainly a big Carolina baseball fan, so I watched them, lose a heartbreaker to Arizona here in the Super Regionals at home. I feel like we blew that, but that's neither here nor there. Probably prior to this year, I don't know that I'd watched 10 innings of baseball, pro ball a year. I've actually kind of enjoyed as of late watching a little bit of Sunday night baseball, but I don't have a specific team. I grew up on the Cubs because here in Charlotte, it was either the Cubs or the Braves that were on TV, and I guess I chose incorrectly and followed the Cubs as a fan. But it was the Mark Grace and Ryan Sandberg and Andre Dawson days. Would have been good to be a Braves fan in the '90s, I guess, when they were good. So we've certainly been Carolina Panthers fans for a long time, since Dave Tepper has owned them. Last year, this past season was the first year we got rid of our tickets, and we were not alone in that. So he has not driven a very positive culture or fan experience here in the Carolinas. So he has not made a bunch of friends here in Charlotte.
Yeah, I have one son who just graduated from OU and another one who's there, and I know North Carolina knocked them off in the playoffs for baseball. But yeah, he seems a bit impetuous and
yeah,
doesn't seem to yeah. Talking about culture, does not seem to have built a great culture. So we'll see what happens. It can be lonely in that CEO seat. So obviously you have to, I think you said it was C12 was the name of the group you're part of. And for companies at stages like yours, there's the SID, which you mentioned, YPO. But have you done other things to sort of, either find advisors or find resources to kind of help you so that it's maybe not so lonely always in the seat?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a relatively young CEO, I'm 44 now. I was named our CEO in 2012. So, I mean, I'm kind of used to being the young guy in the room. And I think I'm self-aware enough to know that, hey, I needed some help. So I certainly think my peer group has been instrumentally helpful. I've been to like an entree leadership event. I've been to the Purpose Summit here, which has been in Charlotte the last 2 years. I'm looking for other parts of the team. So you start to kind of look at attorneys that are good so you kind of like start to build your circle of advisors around you. So I think that has been helpful, and everyone has their own niche of expertise, much like you do as well. So I think finding people who align with my values, but also are A players at what they do has been very helpful. But yes, it can get very lonely. I have 3 young boys, twin 6-year-olds and an 11-year-old. So a lot of work on being an intentional dad. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see that a lot of just that it is busy at work and it is busy at home. And how do you meld those worlds together is not an easy thing. But again, having my C12 peer table that's always holding you accountable. Did you go on your date nights? Are you off your phone when you're at home, or are you just sitting there checking email? So you always have those accountability measures to make you a better leader and a better dad. And that has been helpful.
So before we wrap up here, you mentioned the goal to get to 50 million, looking say 3 years out now, and not just in terms of revenue, what does the company look like? And, I know you're young, but, as you start thinking about sort of legacy and that broader impact that you're working on in the community, et cetera, where do you see the company and yourself in 3 years?
Well, right now we've been very focused on bottom line. Our theme for this year is optimize. So I think with any company going through kind of a high rate of growth, it's hard to nail it just right with staffing levels and all the things. So we have struggled to get profitability where we want it. We've been hovering kind of in the upper single digits, which is not where we want to be. So I believe we should be in that somewhere between 15 and 20% EBITDA range. So I think we'll see revenue probably slow down a little, and maybe in 3 years we're a $60 to $65 million business with higher earnings at the bottom. Hopefully we're able to continue to raise our pay rate for people. You're always looking to improve benefits, things like that, and continue to contribute through our charity to the community. So if we're more profitable, that allows us to give more money away. If we hit our goal this year, we will have deployed over $1 million over the last 8 years in kind of community service and ministry type efforts. So I think we want to continue to set the bar for kind of what business could look like if it's executed well. A growing, profitable business that's also impacting the communities they serve. That would really be what I would consider success to look like. Or we use the word around here a lot that I'm kind of obsessed with, flourishing, and that's different than success. But the company should be winning, the people that work here should be winning, our customers should be winning, and the communities we operate in should be winning. And we would like all those to be doing well if we're doing well.
So one last one, you mentioned being an intentional dad. So, when your kids look back at your work, what do you hope they'll say about kind of the type of leader and dad you were?
It has taken a lot of work as of late. Probably the last 2 years have really focused on being a yes dad. Because I think I talk about this all the time. Kids spell love Time. So I have done a lot to avoid what may be a valid excuse, but hey, dad, can you throw with me? And it starts typically the second I get home. And yep, I'll do that. And it may only be for 10 minutes, but we're filming this from our beach house that we built here that we've been in about a week. So you start to get to that spot in your life where you're counting memories down. And my oldest is 11. And it seems like that's really young. And then you go, we have 7 summers left until he goes away to college. So, I hope that the legacy is you were always there. They love the coaching aspect. And, I just hope that they saw the teaching and that dad was around and dad was fun and dad was trying to teach us the right way to do life.
Great. Sean, it's been great having you on. Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, I appreciate it. I'm certainly very active on LinkedIn. So if any people are following this, feel free to engage with me there. Always appreciate, opinions and thoughts and anything we can do to drive better business for a better impact.
Great. Well, Sean Farrell, CEO of QDS, thanks so much for being on.
All right. Thanks, Josh. Take care, man.
Sorry, hit the wrong button again.